Dinner always felt like a performance in our house. The table was set too perfectly, the food arranged with care, and everyone played their assigned roles. My mother smiled too brightly. My brother leaned back in his chair, confident and careless. My father sat at the head of the table, solid and unmovable, like the final authority on who mattered and who didn't. I had learned long ago how to make myself small at that table. That night, I cooked most of the meal. I always did. My hands still smelled like garlic and oil as I sat down, my shoulders aching from a double shift I hadn't mentioned. No one asked how my day was. They never did. My brother talked about how hard things had been for him lately, how stressed he felt, how unfair his boss was, how tired he was of trying. Everyone nodded like his exhaustion was sacred. I chewed slowly, listening, waiting for dinner to end. Then my father stood up. The scrape of his chair against the floor made my stomach tighten. He picked up his wine glass and smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years, wide, proud, celebratory. "I just want to say something," he announced. My brother looked up, surprised but pleased. My mother's eyes widened. "Congrats," my father said, raising his glass toward my brother. "Here's your car, son." For a second, I didn't understand the words. They floated above the table, unreal and weightless. Then my brother laughed, loud and stunned, asking if he was serious. My father nodded, already pulling keys from his pocket and setting them on the table like a trophy. Everyone erupted. My mother clapped. My brother stood and hugged my father. The keys caught the light, gleaming like proof of love. A brand new car. Paid in full. I stared at my plate, my appetite gone. I thought about my bus pass. About the rent I paid every month without complaint. About the countless times I had swallowed my needs because there was no room in the budget. Then my father's gaze shifted. "And you," he said, his voice changing, cooler, firmer, "rent's due. 900 by Sunday. You're an adult now." The room went silent in the way a room does when something fragile shatters. Heat rushed to my face. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. I looked up, hoping, stupidly, that someone would say something. That my mother would object. That my brother would look uncomfortable. No one did. "Why did I pay?" I asked, my voice barely holding together, "while he gets rewarded?" My father didn't sigh. He didn't hesitate. "Because he's worth it." The words landed heavy and final. In that moment, I understood the truth I'd been circling my entire life. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about responsibility. It was about value. And I wasn't valued. I pushed my chair back quietly. No one stopped me as I left the table. Behind me, conversation slowly resumed, like nothing had happened. But something had. And it would never be undone. I closed my bedroom door gently, the way I always did. Even alone, I'd been trained not to make noise. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my hands, still faintly red from the hot water I'd used to wash the dishes after dinner. Of course I had cleaned up. No one asked me to. No one ever had to. It was simply understood, like my rent, like my silence, like my place. Because he's worth it. The sentence replayed over and over in my mind, each time carving itself deeper. I tried to rationalize it, to soften it, to pretend I had misunderstood. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe it came out wrong. But the truth was sharp and undeniable. My father had weighed us and made his choice out loud. I thought about the first paycheck I'd ever earned. I had been 16, proud, terrified, and eager to help. My dad had smiled then, too, but not like tonight. That smile had been relieved. Grateful. As if a burden had been lifted because I could finally contribute. From that moment on, I never stopped. I paid rent. I paid utilities. I paid in ways no one counted: rides, errands, emotional labor. I learned how to anticipate needs before they were spoken. I learned that love, for me, was conditional. Across the hall, my brother's door was open. I could hear him laughing on the phone, bragging. "Yeah, he actually bought it for me," he said. "Guess things are finally looking up." Something inside me cracked. I stood and walked past his room without stopping. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and finally let the tears fall. They came fast and hot, dripping into the sink as I covered my mouth so no one would hear. Crying felt like failure in that house. Weakness was tolerated in my brother, not in me. When I emerged, my phone buzzed. A message from him. "Dad's in a good mood tonight," smiling face with sunglasses. I stared at the screen, then laughed, a sharp, broken sound that startled even me. Good mood. As if generosity had simply skipped me by accident. I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks I'd memorized years ago. That was when it hit me, not all at once, but slowly, painfully clear. They didn't need me because they loved me. They needed me because I made their lives easier. I was the solution, not the priority. The backup plan. The reliable one. The one who would never leave. My chest tightened as a new thought crept in, quiet, terrifying, and powerful. What if I did? What if I stopped paying? What if I stopped fixing? What if I stopped being worth less just because I was capable? Fear rose first. Where would I go? How would I survive? But underneath it was something unfamiliar, relief. The idea felt like air after years underwater. For the first time, I didn't picture explaining myself. I didn't imagine begging for understanding. I didn't even imagine saying goodbye. I imagined absence. And I realized something that changed everything. They would never see my value while I stayed. So I reached for my suitcase. I waited until the house was asleep. Not because I was afraid they'd stop me, but because I didn't want explanations to weaken my resolve. I had spent my whole life explaining myself, why I was tired, why I was overwhelmed, why I deserved rest. I wasn't doing that again. The hallway light hummed softly as I pulled my suitcase from the closet. It was old and scuffed, the zipper stubborn in places. I folded my clothes carefully, choosing only what I needed. Not the things that tied me to this house, but the things that reminded me I existed beyond it. I packed my documents first. Birth certificate. Social security card. The proof of my identity, separate from their expectations. Then my laptop, the one I paid for myself. A notebook filled with half-finished dreams. And finally, the sweater my grandmother had given me years ago, soft, faded, and still smelling faintly like lavender. She was the only one who ever noticed when I was hurting. The only one who ever told me I mattered without conditions. I paused at the doorway of my room, taking it in one last time. The walls were bare. They always had been. I'd never bothered decorating. Some part of me knew I wouldn't be staying. The kitchen was quiet, the refrigerator humming like a steady breath. I set my suitcase down and reached for a pen. My hand trembled as I pulled a scrap of paper from the drawer. For a moment, I considered leaving without a word. Letting silence speak for me. But I knew them. They would twist the story. Say I was ungrateful. Dramatic. Cruel. So I wrote. Slowly. Carefully. Each word earned. I paid my way long enough. I paused, swallowing hard. You taught me adulthood means responsibility. I could almost hear my father's voice as I wrote it. So I'm taking mine elsewhere. The pen pressed harder now. Don't look for me. I hesitated before the last line. My chest burned. The daughter who was never worth it. I placed the note on the fridge, right beneath my brother's chore chart. The irony didn't escape me. Neither did the relief. I stood there for a moment, waiting for guilt to rush in. For regret. For doubt. None came. Instead, I felt light. I slipped on my shoes, lifted my suitcase, and opened the front door. The night air was cool and sharp, grounding me. I took one last look at the house, its dark windows, its closed-off warmth. It had shaped me, but it would not define me. I closed the door gently. No one stirred. As I walked down the driveway, my phone buzzed. A notification from my bank confirming I'd transferred my savings to a new account. My account. I sat in my car and let myself breathe. Really breathe. The kind that fills your lungs and reminds you that you're alive. I didn't know where I was going yet. I didn't have a perfect plan. But for the first time, every step ahead belonged to me. And somewhere behind me, a refrigerator waited to be opened. Some truths can't be ignored forever. The first call came before noon. I was sitting in my car outside a small cafe, hands wrapped around a paper cup I couldn't quite bring myself to drink from. My phone vibrated against the seat, my brother's name flashing across the screen. I let it ring. Then another call. And another. By the time I checked my voicemail, his voice was sharp with panic. "Where are you? You didn't pay rent. Dad's asking questions." I smiled faintly. Not out of cruelty, but recognition. For the first time, he was feeling the weight I'd carried alone for years. An hour later, my mother called. I answered that one, just once. "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed before I could speak. "You can't just leave. Do you know what you've done?" "I left," I said calmly. My voice surprised even me. It didn't shake. "That's all." She cried then, loud and dramatic, the kind of crying meant to pull me back into place. "You're tearing this family apart," she sobbed. "Your brother needs help. Your father is furious." I ended the call. My phone kept buzzing throughout the day. Messages stacked up, accusations, guilt, fear. By evening, the tone shifted. Confusion replaced anger. My father called. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. By the third voicemail, his voice was lower. "This isn't funny. Call me back." Days passed. Then weeks. I moved into a tiny apartment with uneven floors and too much sunlight. I bought thrift store furniture and arranged it exactly how I wanted. No one criticized my choices. No one demanded anything of me. I slept through the night for the first time in years. The fallout back home was predictable. Without my rent, the bills stacked up. Without my labor, the house grew chaotic. My brother missed payments on the car. He complained about stress, about pressure, about how unfair it was that everything suddenly rested on him. My father sold the car. I heard that through an aunt who just wanted to check on me. She said my dad asked about me at work, pretending he wasn't worried. Pretending everything was fine. One night, months later, I finally listened to the last voicemail he left. "I didn't realize," he said quietly. No anger. No authority. Just exhaustion. "I didn't realize what we lost." I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, and felt something unexpected. Peace. I deleted the message. Not because I hated him. Not because I wanted to punish him. But because I no longer needed his understanding to validate my worth. That was the real revenge. I built a life where I wasn't measured against someone else. Where love wasn't earned through sacrifice. Where I wasn't invisible. They felt my absence like an ache. I felt my freedom like sunlight. And for the first time, I was worth it, to myself.